record this? So
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. It's always good to get that out of the way so that I'm sure that you understand. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate. I really appreciate it.
I'm sorry we're late. I just
That's fine. As long as you have time.
I check my email frequently, but I don't know. It just didn't occur.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you can tell me, is it okay if I ask you some questions and we just have a conversation?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. I'm wondering what first drew you to the League. How did you find out about it, and how did you first become involved?
Well, I first learned about the League back in the late 1960s. I was very involved. I was living in Wilmington, Delaware, and my husband worked for DuPont, and I got involved in a group called Delaware Citizens for Clean Air, and this was when after Nixon was president, and the Clean Air Act had been passed, and there was a lot of hearings and so forth on setting standards, clean air standards. And I went to a couple of these hearings, and I went to one hearing, and a woman who was from the League of Women Voters of Delaware County, of Delaware, Delaware or Wilmington, Delaware, was giving testimony. Interested in joining, but somehow or another I never followed. But, even though I testified, no one from the League contacted me and said, "Hey, you're somebody we'd like to have in our organization." So it just never happened. So then, meanwhile, my husband was transferred to a plant in Kinston, North Carolina, and I read the local paper, and there was an article about the Equal Rights Amendment, which I had never heard of. And Hal Vanderven, who was the senator from North Carolina at the time, was objecting to the Equal Rights Amendment because of all the horrible things that were going to happen to women because we would get equal rights, like having to share bathrooms and all that crap. And so I thought, this is ridiculous. So I went to my local library and asked the librarian there if she could get me some information about the Equal Rights Amendment. And so she did. She got me a copy of the Congressional Record. And there was an article in the Congressional Record. It's probably a speech by, someone, and pretty much debunking all the information. So anyway, to make a long story short, I found out that the League of Women Voters had recently made a decision to oppose the Equal Rights Amendment. And now this was in 1972 or 73. And it took the League of Women Voters that long to, but anyway, we won't go into that. But they did finally decide that they would oppose the ERA. So I thought, well, this is great. This is an organization I want to join. And there was no local league in Kinston. There had been one in Kinston, but when the Civil Rights Act was passed in Kinston, North Carolina, the local league disbanded, which was kind of interesting. But there was a local league in a neighboring town. And so I got in touch with them and joined that league. And I went to a couple of meetings, but I never really got very active in it. And meanwhile, my husband was transferred again to Columbia, South Carolina. And so when we arrived in Columbia, South Carolina, I got in touch. Well, I guess the league got in touch with me. I mean, they found out I moved, and so I was contacted by a woman, Keller Baumgartner, who was active in the league, and so she took me under her wing, and she was a member of the national board of the league at the time, and her portfolio was the Equal Rights Amendment. So she was really gung ho on this, and she took me under her wing, and we collaborated on a campaign to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in South Carolina, which of course was totally hopeless. But first of all, I didn't realize that it was totally hopeless. But in addition, that it was just kind of fun to try to organize, and so we put together a campaign booklet, and got all the local leagues in South Carolina educated on the Equal Rights Amendment, and so that was a lot of fun, very interesting.
Can I ask what it was like back then organizing? Because it has to be way different than organizing.
Well, of course, you had to do everything by telephone. That's all we had, telephone and U.S. mail, and so yeah, it was definitely different. And of course, we had long distance telephone calls were an issue, but Columbia, South Carolina was the state capital, and so our state office was located there, and I think the South Carolina League did have a state office. But anyway, I joined the state board there, and went to state board meetings and whatnot, and which we held in various places around the state. They weren't always in Columbia. We tried to take the show out to various parts of the state. But so anyway, we did organize, and tried to sign up the legislators to support the Equal Rights Amendment, and we thought we had signed up our local representative, who was a Republican, a woman Republican, who had promised to vote for the Equal Rights Amendment. And so anyway, it did come to a vote, a floor vote in the state legislature, and she voted against it, which of course infuriated us. And I decided, as a admitted Democrat, that I would never again vote for a Republican. Because they can't be trusted. But anyway, nevertheless, that was, of course, the end of that campaign. And I did work on some of the things for the league, you know, in the, but
Can I go back and ask a question?
meanwhile,
Can I ask a
sure.
question or two just to clarify? Baumgartner was the South
Her name
Carolina.
was Hiller Baumgarten at the time. And she,
Hilla, Hila? Hilla? Is that what you're saying?
pardon?
Her first name was Hilla,
Keller,
Oh,
Keller.
her first name was Keller, and her second name was Baumgartner.
No, that's right.
Okay. Okay. And
she's still alive, and she has remarried, and her current last name is Barron, Barron.
are you in touch with her at all?
Yes, we exchange cards all the time.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that must have been
at the Christmas time, and she's has a I don't know what you would call it, some kind of a education center that is named after her, and is basically a collection of information about the Equal Rights Amendment that she had accumulated. So she's highly regarded in Columbia, South Carolina.
Do you remember what year that was? You moved in 1973.
Well, I moved to there in to Columbia, and I guess it would have been 1973 or 74, around in there.
And do you remember what kind of arguments you put forth for the Equal Rights Amendment? Do you remember the kinds of things you said? I would love to know that.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, it's the usual. A lot of what we had to do was debunk all the false arguments against it, but it it's the usual thing. The guarantee of equal pay, the fact that mainly the main argument was that equal rights for women should be recognized in the Constitution. It should be a part of the Constitution, and what can I say? I'd have to go back through my literature, and it wasn't easy, let's put it that way, to make the argument for why we needed the ERA, because it would say, well, we've got the Equal Pay Act for women, we don't need that. Well, of course, that's not something that's guaranteed in the Constitution. I think that probably RGB, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was the one that made really the strongest arguments for why the Equal Rights Amendment was necessary, because of all the lawsuits that she had to bring in the Supreme Court, so.
It's interesting because I was just out of graduate school in 73. And I remember going through all that, and it most of it did evolve around financial things.
Yes. Actually, the reason why I was interested in it was when I went to a graduate school. I got my doctorate in biology, zoology. And when I moved to Wilmington, Delaware, I went to the University of Delaware and talked to the head of the biology department there about the possibility of getting a job. And he told me that he wouldn't hire a woman.
That's a private institution, right? It's not a state.
No, it was a state.
It's a state
institution. Yeah, the University of Delaware.
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, I got that a lot too. I went into television production, and there were no women in television production. Probably like there were very few women in biology.
Sure.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, discrimination against women was rampant. So anyway, my husband got transplants. I think I'm trying to think of the sequence of events. It was 1973 or 72, 73, 74. I think that was about the time that John Gardner launched the organization Common Cause. And my husband and I joined Common Cause.
The same Keller Baumgardner? The same?
Sorry?
The same person, Keller Baumgardner?
No,
who launched Common Cause?
Who organized Common Cause? That was John Gardner, the former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare under Johnson. And yeah, they published a full-page ad in the New York Times announcing the launching of Common Cause, and this was to be an organization that would restore faith in government, and it would had an agenda for reforming various government institutions like campaign finance and government secrecy and lobbying and other reforms. And so we joined the organization. And so basically I had joined Common Cause. Oh, and somebody came to Columbia from the national organization in Washington of Common Cause to organize a local state chapter. So I went to the meeting, and there were probably about 4 or 5 of us at the meeting. And so I ended up being chosen as the vice president of Common Cause of South Carolina, and started writing newsletters for them. And then meanwhile, my husband got transferred, but as part of my activism with Common Cause, I found out that they had elections. The National Governing Board was chosen by elections. And I had, of course, as part of my writing newsletters and getting things done for Common Cause, I had to interact with the national office a lot. And I thought, well, we need to have representation on the national board because we're not, having all this trouble dealing with these people. So I asked this gentleman who was a former government employee, who was I think he was the president at that time. We had chosen him as president. I said, why don't you run for the National Governing Board? And he said, no, he didn't want to run. He was too old and didn't have the energy to do that, but that I should do it. So I thought, well, what the hell? So I circulated a petition and got myself onto the ballot of the national, to be on the National Governing Board of Common Cause by virtue of getting enough signatures on a petition. So meanwhile, I got transferred, or my husband got transferred to Wilmington, North Carolina. And I didn't hear anything more about, Common Cause or anything with the National Governing Board. And after we had moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, I got this telegram from Common Cause informing me that I had been elected to the National Governing Board.
Oh, that's great.
Which I thought was hysterical. But anyway, I think maybe they got me confused. Well, maybe because it was a national ballot. I mean, everybody and all the members of Common Cause could vote in this election. And I thought, why would they vote for me? But I thought, well, Lora Lavin, okay, catchy name, and Southern, of course, I wasn't a true Southerner, but anyway, what the hell? And, maybe they got me confused with Linda Lavin. So anyway, I started, that was the beginning of my stint with the National Governing Board of Common Cause, but I also kept up my activism with the League of Women Voters. And so I eventually was asked to be on the state governing board of the League of Women Voters of North Carolina, and working on social issues and government type issues. And so as a result of my associated with the League and Common Cause, I got very active in the campaign to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in North Carolina, which had a better shot at it. That was a really very intensive campaign. It was well funded, and we really thought that we were going to get it passed in North Carolina. And my local representative to the state legislature was a Republican, but he was Jewish. And they had worked very hard on him to get him on board to be a vote for the Equal Rights Amendment. And they have, got rabbis and so forth, putting pressure on him. And so that was a lot of fun. But anyway, when the vote came down, it failed by one vote. And guess who voted against it? So that was infuriating, absolutely infuriating. So anyway, that was the end of that. But I got as a result of my involvement in that campaign, I was chosen to be a representative to the National Women's Conference in Houston. So
Who organized that conference? Was that a league?
that was organized by I don't know. It's a number. I think it was a coalition of women's groups like NOW and the League, and it was a coalition effort. And I'd have to go back through my notes on that. I probably have a lot of memorabilia from that National Women's Conference. But anyway, that was a very interesting experience. And actually, I think there was a program about it on public television not too long ago.
And was that
talked about a lot of things that went on at that conference that I wasn't even aware of.
That's what conferences are good for, is learning, learning new stuff, right?
Yeah, right. So anyway, but the thing is that my husband got transferred again to Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
And so I joined the Common Cause and the League of Women Voters in Nashville, and was on the state board of the League of Women Voters in Nashville. And that was very interesting. Those women were very well organized. The League had a state office in Nashville, and which was, quite frankly, a lot more helpful in many ways than the state office in Pennsylvania. I was on the state board, and I had to write regular reports on my activities and so forth. And it was a one-woman office, and if I wanted something typed up, she would do it. And I mean, it was wonderful. And she, of course, that was her role. I mean, she wasn't like an executive director or anything like that. She was sort of an administrative assistant to the president. And so that was her job. And I just, basically what I remember about that is that it was very well organized. There were I'm trying to think of some of the things. The civil rights movement in Tennessee was quite active. It was quite active, and a lot of those women were involved in the civil rights movement. And a very admirable group, I thought.
What year was this do you remember around when you moved to Nashville?
I'm trying to think of my daughter was in sixth, seventh. It probably would have been in the late 1970s sometime. We moved to Pennsylvania back to Pennsylvania in 1982. So I would suspect that we were probably in Nashville, Tennessee for 4 years. So it probably would be 78. somewhere around there. And
when you say you moved back to Pennsylvania, did you
well,
grow up?
we were. My husband was transferred back to Wilmington, but we decided to live in Pennsylvania, not to live in Wilmington. At the time, Conoco had the DuPont company had purchased Conoco, and all those Conoco executives were buying up houses in Wilmington, and you couldn't get a decent house at a decent price. So we I had been familiar with Swarthmore and this area because I had done some teaching at Rosemont College, when we first moved to Wilmington. And so I knew about the area. And my husband actually had a year to, our daughter was on her final year in high school. And so we didn't move the family right away so she could, complete her senior year. And so he was here on his own and had a lot of time to explore the area. We ended up wanting to live in Swarthmore. I thought this was an ideal town to live in.
It is.
No commuting, no driving your children to God knows where.
I'm so jealous of you, of all of you that live in Swarthmore.
I thought it was heaven.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful community. Really a community.
Yeah, right. So anyway,
can you talk a little bit about your teaching at Rosemont? Did you teach biology?
Yes, I taught developmental biology.
And this was during your first time in Wilmington, and then again when you moved back to Wilmington?
When we moved back to Wilmington, I did look for some jobs teaching, and I eventually got a job at Delaware County Community College.
Oh.
But that didn't last very long. And basically, I just gave up on that and became a full-time volunteer. When we moved here, and I joined the league, or the league got hold of me, they asked me if I would, they had just adopted a study on gambling, and asked me if I would head up the study. They said I would be ideal because they thought they were probably biased, and my being an from outside, I wouldn't have the same amount of bias and be able to come from a more open-minded area. And that's when I when I said I found the league in Tennessee a lot more helpful than in the league in Pennsylvania, because I was heading up this gambling study, but I could get no administrative support from the state office, zero. And so I had to do everything myself. And I still, we still didn't have, we had computers and word processing at the time, but I didn't have one. I mean, it was still pretty expensive, to have that kind of a setup. And so I had my typewriter. That's how I did, got the study done, was on my typewriter and cutting and pasting, literally, with the scissors and glue. So that was tough. I think I finally did get the final study guide typed up by someone else, but it was pretty difficult to do that at the time. And so anyway, that was how I got involved in the league. And I was on the state board by virtue of heading up the gambling study. But when we were through with the study, I just quit the state board. It was too much. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And but I think I did rejoin the state board later on.
Wow. So yeah,
And go ahead.
It's so interesting that you became a state leader when it didn't matter where you lived. You always ended up as a state leader in the league.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's right. I did. I guess it was because I was a willing worker. And I just was looking for challenges to do. And when I was living in South Carolina, I did teach for a year at the University of South Carolina. It was a temporary, job. They were, so, but other than that, I really wasn't doing much that was terribly challenging. Yeah, I found the league to be an organization that was challenging to belong to.
What kind of skills have you found that are consistently used in leadership in the league? I mean,
What kind of what?
What kind of skills do you have? What kind of skills?
Well, I probably, I think my orientation and my skills were more in the studious area rather than in the personal interaction area. And, so I don't think that I personally had the kind of interpersonal skills that are important in any organization. But, I did like to study and write and organize and think, let's put it that way. Study issues. And
that's why when you talk at meetings.
When I was in the league in Pennsylvania, I wrote a lot of articles for the State Voter, which of course is not published anymore. I used to enjoy doing that, and I was in charge of issues in action for several years, and it was I wrote an action manual for the league and set up. We had these specialists around the state, different members of the league who were interested in particular issues, and we designated them as specialists. And it's the issue and action share. My job was to get these specialists to provide them with the information they need on legislation that affected their issue, and to get them in touch with coalitions, to build coalitions with other organizations so that we could work together on these issues. So, it was that kind of thing. A willingness to reach out and build coalitions with other groups.
I would imagine moving around so much, it's also, membership in the league is also a good way to meet, smart.
Well, to get in, to get in touch. It was being a member of the league was very beneficial to me. Absolutely. It was the one group that would welcome me. Let's put it that way. When I moved to Swarthmore, I tried to get involved in playing tennis because I like to play tennis, and I couldn't get a tennis, get involved in a tennis group. I finally got involved in a tennis group, but it was by way of a member of the League of Women Voters who also played tennis. Let's put it that way. Swarthmore had a garden club, and no one ever invited me to join the garden club. They had a discussion group. There was a women's discussion group, and I don't ever remember anybody reaching out to me for that. They had supper clubs, dinner clubs. My husband and I were never invited to join any of the dinner clubs. I don't know why. Maybe they just didn't think we'd be interested or whatever. I don't know. But
my mom.
I didn't fit in with the local culture. Let's put it that way. of Swarthmore, but I did get involved with the league, and I was the one group that was willing to welcome me.
I'm interested in what drew you to biology, because aside from teaching, did you do research in biology? What were you interested in the field of biology?
Well, I did research in fertilization.
Oh, is that what you said your major?
Actually, what happened was I went to get my master's degree at the University of at Marquette University in Milwaukee, and I did my master's thesis with a professor there who was working on using immunology to combat cancer, basically. And it was a pretty young, I did what I did was I worked on my thesis involved comparing the composition of tumor issues in mice with normal issues. To put it simply, to try to figure out what it was that was about tumor issues that made them tumorous, and so that was how I did what I did my thesis on for the master's degree. And after I got my master's degree, I tried to get a job locally. I was living in Chicago, the Chicago area at the time, and I just couldn't find a job that was with a master's degree. And so I, with the help of my thesis advisor, I finally got a job in the laboratory of a professor at the University of Michigan. And he was working on using immunology as a tool to trace the composition of tissues in frogs as they developed. And he was also working on, there was a tumor that was quite prevalent in frogs. And he was working on the tumors, the frog tumors. And so I was kind of involved in that. And so I got interested in what whether we could use immunology, antibodies, to analyze what happened at the surface of sperm and eggs when they interact. How do they interact, and what happens? And these are chemical processes, and I was interested in what those processes, see if we could figure out what those processes were. And so that's what I worked on for my doctoral thesis. And so that's how I got involved in developmental biology, let's put it that way.
Is that where you got your PhD at University of Michigan?
At the University of Michigan.
You have really lived all over. I think it's really cool. I don't quite know how to phrase this question, but are women, well, you've lived all over decades.
Yeah.
But I've always had a picture in my head of Southern women being different than Northern women, and Midwestern women being different than Eastern women. Is that true? Just as women.
I think so.
How
Absolutely.
How would you describe that? What is the difference?
Well, of course, Southern women, in the South, discrimination was overt. I mean, in the North, or at least in the Midwest, where I did most of my growing up, I didn't come in contact with Black people very much, or any other cultures, for some reason. I don't know. I just never have it. I don't remember being exposed much to either Black people or Asians or Jewish people or so forth. I mean, it was all white, middle-class Christians and Catholics. And when we moved to finally moved to here to Swarthmore, I found the East to be a lot different as far as how people are organized. There was more cultural identity, let's put it that way. I'm a Catholic, and the Catholic Church here in the East was organized around ethnicity. So there were the Polish Catholics and the Irish Catholics and the Italian Catholics, you know, and so forth. You know what I mean? And also, I, you know, for the first time, I came in contact with people who were Jewish and people who were Black or, you know, and not so much Asians, but you know, when I first moved here, we actually had quite a few women who lived in Chester who were members of the League. I don't know what happened to those women or why they lost contact, but I think the League here, particularly in Swarthmore, reached out a lot to Chester and did a lot of organizing there. But somehow or another, that connection got broken at some point.
Our current president, by the way, is reestablishing, Barbara is reestablishing that connection. And
Yeah.
we're co-sponsoring a lot of events with the NAACP and media, which has a lot of interest in Chester.
Yeah, well, we did a lot of that too, you know, things together with the NAACP. I don't know whether there's the NAACP, but you know, probably if she could get in touch with Black women's organizations, should be that would be very effective, more effective than the NAACP, in my opinion.
Well, that's
the women's sororities, the Black
yeah.
women's sororities.
Yeah, that's a good lead. Hadn't thought of that. Well, you know what would really help me in putting this together is
I don't know how helpful I'm being to you.
No, you're actually talking about the issues over time is very interesting. You talked about the Equal Rights Amendment in the beginning, and then you talked about the Civil Rights Movement, and you talked about—
Well, there's the Civil Rights Movement, but as a result of my involvement with Common Cause, I got more involved with government reform issues, like campaign finance reform and lobbying and those kinds of things.
So can you talk a little bit about those issues and the time and how things changed as a result of your activism?
Well, I'd say, you know, probably as far as the League is concerned, I'd say that we were very interested in, you know, the money in politics, campaign finance reform, and of course, election issues. It was as a result of my involvement with the League, I've got very interested in elections and very aware of how much our election system needed to be reformed. The whole system in Pennsylvania is very interesting because the state Secretary of State doesn't have that much authority over how elections are run in Pennsylvania. It's all local.
Is that different than in the other states where
yes,
you live?
It is. It is. In fact, um, I'd say even the league was much different in the way it is organized. And of course, it's changed a lot. But when I first joined the league in Pennsylvania, I couldn't believe how many different levels of organization we had in the league. We had our local leagues, of course, and the state league. But in addition to that, we had the League of Women Voters of Delaware County. So it's a county league, an interleague organization. And we also had the League of Women Voters of Southeastern Pennsylvania, believe it or not. Have you ever heard of that?
A long time ago.
Yeah, well, we had that. And so, you know, you were going to meetings, excuse me, all this Olivia calling me back. Then in addition to that, we had a league that was organized around Delaware River issues, which involved New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, as well as Pennsylvania. So there was a lot of this interleague organization and coalition kind of things going on. And there's not a whole lot of that happening anymore.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think that it's because, well, I think it's because the people who were originally set up these interleague activities, Roberta Ehrenberg and Jeanette Ross come to mind. They're gone. And when they were gone, you know, the energy behind those issues dissipated.
I did an interview like this with Roberta Ehrenberg. I guess it must be 10 years ago or more, when she was at the Quadrangle living there. And she told me that when she was president of the local league, they used to have 3 meetings every day that they had meetings because they had so many members, they couldn't fit in one person's house. So they'd have a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting and an evening meeting, rehashing all the same content. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, she was, is she talking about her local league?
Yeah.
Haverford.
That's
when I first moved here, we had 7 local leagues in Delaware County. 7.
Wow.
Local leagues. And we had a league in Upper Darby, Springfield, Lansdowne, Haverford, Radnor, Swarthmore, Media. I don't know, how many is that?
That's a lot.
I just remember 7 local leagues, and we had a Delaware County interleague organization that met once a month, and Roberta was president of that for a while, and of course our basic focus was the Delaware County Council and the way they operated. I remember going to those meetings of the Delaware County Council, and they were unbelievable. They would last 10 minutes. It was quite interesting, and actually, for a while there, we had trouble. We used to have meetings with the Delaware County Council, these luncheon meetings. And after a while, they got angry with the league and refused our invitations to luncheons. So I think the luncheons didn't take place for a couple of years. And but when I became president of the ILO, the Delaware County League, we got the luncheons back. And I can't remember how that happened. But anyway, we smoothed over some of our differences, let's put it that way. And and I think the composition of the council changed too. And some of the people who were a bit angry with Roberta, let's put it that way, who was very outspoken, left, and Roberta was, of course, no longer president. And so we smoothed over those issues.
Well, it's very interesting.
So we're back to having the luncheons now.
Yeah, and this year it'll be a virtual luncheon over Zoom, unfortunately, but at least we'll have a luncheon.
Yeah.
If there is any possibility that you could send me an email, if you have the time at some point, to give me a framework of where you lived when, that might just help me.
Yeah, I can probably have to go through my emails. Somewhere I have a biography that
I would love that.
outlines a bunch of this stuff.
Oh, I would love that.
But I have to, I have to go back through my computer issues and see if I can find that stuff.
Okay, if you find it. Otherwise, what we've said today is fine. It's actually getting very dark in your room, and it's hard to see you.
Yeah, because the lights are, it's the I haven't turned on the lights.
But I need to scoot
and
now.
The light switches are where I can't reach them easily. But anyway, the league was organized a lot more differently when I first came here 35 years ago, or 38, than it is now. A lot of those interactions have, well, for one thing, a lot of these local leagues disbanded, and it's kind of interesting that I was president of the Delaware County ILO, and I would hear secondhand that such and such a league had disbanded and no longer. I mean, I didn't know they were quitting. I was president of the ILO, and somehow or another, the fact that these leagues were in trouble never came up at our meetings. They just kind of faded into the background, and of course the Media League became expanded its outreach, and a lot of people. A lot of the Springfield folks, of course, wanted to merge with the media, and I think that's how the Central Delaware County League got organized. And I think that was the result of the emerging of media in Springfield, if I'm not mistaken. But some of these other leagues disbanded, and I thought, well, what happened to those members? Why didn't we know that they were disbanding so we could at least keep the members that were remaining and get them active? but that never happened.
Well, that's
So,
why I was a member of the Haverford League for many years, and that's why we approached Central Delaware County, because we wanted to remain active, but there were only 3 of us left. And
yeah,
we couldn't
right. Well, I
place.
thought, so what if there were only 3 left? I thought, well, even if there were only 2 or 3 people left in that league, if they were interested in being part of the league, let's get them involved. So
Well, that's what we did. We all joined the Central
yeah,
Delaware County.
yeah. So
Lora, I'm sorry. I need to.
now we're down to just 2 leagues.
Yeah, but they're pretty. Central Delaware County is pretty big. I think it has 180 members.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is.
So,
Well, the Swarthmore League merged too, but I don't think we have very many of the original Swarthmore members are in the Delaware County League anymore, because the ones that were active in Swarthmore have all passed away or moved away.
well, Lora, I need to scoot at this point because I have to get dinner ready for.
Yeah,
But if I have more questions, can I email you?
sure.
Okay. I learned so much from you, and it was so interesting talking to you. Thank you for taking an hour, more than an hour, and chatting. It was really fun.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I hope that it was helpful. It did the uh, development of the atomic bomb. Of course, we didn't know it was a bomb at the time, but anyway, we moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which was one of the sites where that was where they were separating the U-230, the uranium, enriching uranium for the bomb, which of course we didn't know that was what they were doing there, but that's what he was involved with. He was an electrical engineer. And so I lived there we moved there in 1942, and I left there in 1948. So I was there from 2nd or 3rd grade through junior high school. And then we lived in Chicago. And we actually lived in a hotel in Chicago for a year because it was post-war and there were no houses. So we lived in a hotel, and I went to a boarding school and for a year, and then we moved to a new development called Park Forest in Illinois, and it was basically it was just a whole new community that was built up. It's kind of like Levittown,
Yeah.
And so we lived there for a while, and then when until I was in my junior year in high school, and then we moved to Elmhurst, Illinois. And I had my last 2 years of high school in Elmhurst, and then went to college in Iowa. Marycrest College in Iowa is a Catholic women's college, and graduated from there in 1957. Went to graduate school in Milwaukee, and then went to Michigan and ended up going to graduate school in Michigan.
Wow. You must be very
And
good
moved
at
to
packing. I bet you're very good at packing.
At what?
At
Passing?
packing up things.
Oh, packing, yeah, right. Well, all those moves with DuPont were very easy because DuPont paid for uh, the moving expenses. And so I just didn't do anything. I just told the movers to come in, pack the stuff up, and move it someplace else. And the first time we had the move from Wilmington to Kinston, North Carolina, I just told the movers, come in, pack everything up. They packed everything up, put it in the back of the truck, shut the truck up. And when we got to Kinston, the first thing that came out of the truck was a bag of garbage.
They really packed everything.
They had moved my garbage. That's how organized I was.
Well, Laura, on that note, I'm going to say good night and thanks again for spending time. If you do come across that biography, I would love to see it.
Yeah, okay.
And if you think of it, that would be great. And thank you again for taking, gosh, an hour and a half to sit and chat. It was really good. I hope you have a good evening. And I'll let you know if I have.
I don't even know what time it is. Is it 6 o'clock?
It's 5:45, yeah.
5:45, yeah. Yeah, I usually watch the PBS, the evening news hour. So I'll turn that on. Okay, well, it was nice to talk about myself. I like to talk about myself.
You deserve it. You deserve it.